Bluefin Toastmasters, how are we doing this evening?
Good.
Not a lot of enthusiasm. I can sense there is a conflict in the room already. Now just so that I get an idea, who here has ever been in a situation where there's been a conflict with someone or are currently in a conflict situation with someone? Yeah. Wow, a lot of people. Could someone give me an example, please?
Housemate didn't take the rubbish out.
Housemate didn't take the rubbish out. Another example.
Dispute over being wrong changed.
Sorry?
A dispute over being wrong changed.
The dispute over being wrong changed. Very good. Another one, please.
Pedestrian jumping in front of my bike.
A pedestrian
Yeah.
jumping in front
Can
of
relate
your
to that.
bike. Wow. Oh, plenty of good example of conflict there. But first off, what is the definition of a conflict? So the definition of a conflict is what you get when two or more people have differences, real or perceived, that are not resolved. There is a key word here that is the word perceived, because sometimes we actually end up in conflict situation over nothing, but we just feel that there's a difference and therefore things go down the hill when that really shouldn't be the case. And what type of conflict are there in this great big word? The first conflict would be a conflict of personalities, where we all know someone that is a little bit difficult to work with. Can we all think of someone right now? Yeah, we can all think of someone that is a little bit difficult. We don't necessarily think or feel like them, or they're just a bit of a troublemaker. That's the first type of the conflict. The second one is simply a misunderstanding that we discussed earlier, where we actually don't have a conflict fundamentally. We all want to achieve the same thing, but we don't necessarily have the same idea, or we feel that we're actually not on the same page. Issues. It could simply be a conflict of a very specific issue. We've got a perfect example that earlier, being shortchanged. Being shortchanged is something very specific that we can focus on, and that's an example of a specific conflict. The housemate not taking the bin out, that is another great example of this type of conflict. The bike rider that might come in contentious personalities, perhaps. What's the last one? And the last one is styles of leadership. Can you think of the different types of leadership there are out there in the world?
Command and control.
Command and control, autocratic, what else?
Empowering.
Empowering, so more of a delegation leadership. What else? Another example?
Consensus.
Diplomatic or consensus. So there are many different types of leadership, and not all of them are necessarily good or bad. They just, each of them have got their own strengths and weaknesses, and they're best applied to different situations. But as human beings, we're all different personalities. Who here is familiar with Myers-Briggs? Most people are. I score ENTJ on Myers-Briggs. It's extremely rare, only 1% of the population has it, but that type of Myers-Briggs personality is quite conflict-prone in some situations because of the way we see the world. Now, how do we resolve conflict, though? Well, there are a number of approaches to resolving conflict, and we will be covering some of them in more detail tonight. The first one is to ignore the conflict. We'll just say, well, we're just going to ignore it, nothing's going to happen, it's all fine, and you just let it happen, because fundamentally it doesn't affect the organization. It can be a good thing in the short term. In the long term, it's like cancer. It festers and festers and festers until eventually it just blows out in the open. The next one is to smooth it over. It's where you basically just try and get the people together. You do this kind of forced handshake type thing, and then you say, this is it, the conflict is over. In situation that calls for immediate action, it could be an approach, but in other situations, fundamentally, where you're not really resolving the conflict there, you're just putting it on the back burner. So again, just like the first one, it could blow up in the open again. The next one will be to use force, where you basically say, because I am so and so, you two will stop fighting. Will stop fighting with each other. It can be effective in some situation, but in the world of work, where we don't necessarily have autocratic leadership anymore, that may not be the best method actually. So we might need to think of another method instead, such as compromise. Compromise is basically when the two parties, they get together and they agree to put their differences aside, and they agree to kind of see each other's point of view, to try and put themselves in the other person's shoes. It's not always easy, but it can work and it can be a very effective method. And the last one is collaboration. It is again similar to compromise, but this time we just have a bit of a structured framework where we just speak with each other, listen with each other, and brainstorm ideas. The net result is that none of the parties might win, and instead one might be right or wrong, and so you might move in a completely different direction. So conflict can actually be a good thing sometimes if it's healthy and controlled, because it allows us for some debate, for differences of opinion to be debated upon, and potentially for compromises to be made, or even an entirely new direction to be taken, thinking out of the box. If you get two people, one says A, one says B, well actually C might very well be the way forward. So let's cover one of the methods. And one thing, why have I got these pictures here of the two cons, you think? There are always two sides indeed. There are always two sides to an argument, always two sides to a story. And a mistake that we can sometimes make in a conflict situation, if we are called to resolve a conflict and we hear, such and such has stolen £600 of that bank account and run away with it, that sounds really bad, doesn't it? Huh? Would you get angry if you were thrown in that situation? Yes, you would. But it is important to hear the other person's point of view. Now, it might very well be that there's a thief at work here, but for the sake of it, and depending on the framework in which this set the second place, I would actually want to know what it came to be and what's the set point of view. Because maybe it's that person lashed out in a very particular because they felt it a certain way. So let's always remember both sides of an argument. This is personally one of my own areas for development personally, because I can sometimes jump to conclusions slightly and just think, okay, if so-and-so said it was very bad, then it must be very bad. And the collaborative framework to resolving conflict is quite effective, and that's one of the methods that we're just going to explore in a bit more detail. And to start off with, you must identify the root cause of the conflict. Is this basic? And this can be tricky because you have to cut through the noise there. If, for example, I'll just take the conflict of the housemaid not throwing the trash out. Is this the conflict itself, or is it just a symptom of something a lot bigger? Could it be that the root cause might be that actually when everybody came together and decided on some house rule, no clear house rule were defined, and as a result things happen? I'll take being shortchanged for something. What is the root cause there? Could it be that the contract was misread? Could it be that the contract was maybe even wrongly written? There could be a hell of a lot of things that work there. And when we use emotional work like shortchange or being angry, we have to take a step back and say, root cause analysis, please. All parties in a conflict must speak. If there are three people in a conflict with each other, they all must have a chance to hear their points of view and to speak, uninterrupted if possible. That can be tricky, because if someone says something and you want to challenge them, you just want to challenge, don't you? But this is where we must listen to the person and allow them to speak uninterrupted. And the next one is obvious, it's everybody must listen. Listen very attentively, pay very careful attention to what is being said, so that this way we are able to put each other in the other person's shoes. If Kasia and I have a conflict over something, for example, I don't see why we should have a conflict, I would want her to listen to my point of view and I would want her to do the same. And this way, we might be able to shine some light through the darkness. Now, this exercise allows us to identify the area where we have a disagreement. And I'll go back to the example of the housemaid not throwing the trash out. Is the area of disagreement that someone should have done it but decided not to do it? Or is it something perhaps a lot bigger? We need to be clear on one of it. And the information that was given to me earlier, the housemaid not throwing the trash out, it's a start, but I need to know the bigger picture of what's going on here. The bigger picture is really important, because for example, I could start running right now, and if you just see me running like that, you're going to think, what the hell is he doing that? What the hell is he running? But maybe you're going to broaden the picture and you can see that there's going to be there's a dinosaur coming that way, and I'm running away from the dinosaur because I don't want to be eaten. Therefore, I have a legitimate reason to run. It's a bit of a far-fetched example, but I think it's a good way to kind of but c'est une perspective. Now, in every conflict, we have areas for agreement. And I'll take, for example, go back to the housemate example because it is a very good example. The agreement is that we will all want to live together in a clean, peaceful, and quiet house. Is it, or am I making the assumption?
Not so much quiet.
Okay, not so much quiet that we want to have a fun house. But there is an agreement that we're going to live together and we must abide by certain rules, therefore. So, this is a very sound basis because this is something we can build upon as we move on to the next stage. That actually, despite the fact that we have a slight conflict, there are things that we agree on. This is very powerful. In every conflict situation, people agree on something. You can even take some of the worst conflict in the world at the moment. Despite the fact that they seem quite significant, there are still some slight areas of agreement between people. Now, that's why it gets a bit more fun when we brainstorm solution. We've had a big discussion, and now we're going to brainstorm solution. And by brainstorming, I mean not just solution A, solution B, all kinds of solutions. Let's think out of the box and let's really open up the creativity here. Because potentially, this conflict situation might enable us to identify new ways to sort out the problem and to identify things that we completely not thought of before. So you see, conflict can be a good thing if it's managed properly. And the last one is finally to agree. We brainstormed something, we said, oh, it was great, now let's all agree on it and let's all get on board if possible. Let's all get on board if possible. If there are still some slight differences, go back to the circle again and try and wrinkle out all these differences. A question I always found very useful to ask when brainstorming things and kind of wanting to go deep is why? When we were kids, we were always asking, Mummy, Daddy, why is the sky blue? Why is water transparent? Why is my skin beige? Or something like that. We're all doing these things. And this why is such a powerful word. Because this way, we can just start anew. Does that all make sense? Now, there is another method to identify conflict that's more suited to kind of conflict between two people, and that's the desk method. I kind of learned that method in Lisbon a couple of months ago when we went for Toastmasters training, and I just want to explain it in more detail because I found it very useful personally. The first letter is the letter D. D is for describe. This is where you're describing what went wrong, what exactly the disagreement is. And if it's between two people, be very specific in what may have offended you in someone. Is it something that they said? Is it something that they did? Describe what it is. And the next step is to express. Express how did that make you feel? You felt ignored, you felt lost. Really express and allow the other person to transport themselves into your shoes if possible. Then that's where you specify. Where you specify how things could be done slightly differently. Could be done slightly differently or what you would like to see done instead. And the next is a consequence. And I don't mean the negative consequences, I mean the positive consequences. If you'd done this differently, we would be working together a lot more collaboratively. If you were doing this differently, we as a team, we have objectives to make, we will be on a much stronger course to meet the objective. So really highlight the positive there in the C. And I'd like to kind of conclude by saying one thing, is it that as leaders, we're all going to be facing conflict. It's not fun, I don't like being in conflict situations, but it is something that we have to face, and ultimately something that makes us a lot stronger as individuals and as person. And that quote I found by the guy that started leadership studies is leaders do not avoid, repress or deny conflict, but they rather see it as an opportunity. Now, opportunity is the key word here, because if, for example, 100 years ago someone had said, what do you want to get faster from point A to point B, they would have said, I'd like a faster horse, can you bring me some faster horses please? Not possible. So how did the conflict was sorted? Out of the box thinking, combustion engine, the car. How much time do we have left, timekeeper?
15 seconds.
I have time to take one quick question then, please. Yes, please, lady there.
Can you give us an example of when you've used one of these methods?
I've used the desk method recently when I had a conflict with someone that was looking to start a new club. We had a slightly different ways of viewing things, and I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same wavelength. So I highlighted what I felt we could do better, and really specified this is what we could think of doing differently, and then the positive consequence is you will go ahead more faster, your club will get shut a lot earlier. Does that make sense? Okay. I think that's the end of my time. Thanks for having me. Back to Mr. Toastmaster.